Just as the human soul is buried within the body, the old walled city of Jerusalem is surrounded by the traditional trappings of a modern urban area. Come in through the west, through the 19th and 20th century buildings of the new city area, or approach through the Muslim East Jerusalem section, and you eventually find the life and personality of this holy land. You find Old Jerusalem. This is a city within a city. Visitors soon realize that the true spirit of this international community lies in an ancient, protected enclave, walled off from the rest of the world. Today, the throngs that pack into Old Jerusalem pass through one of 7 major working gates. An 8th, walled-up gate is clearly evident, but is unusable. The blocked gate is the beautiful Golden Gate, a double entry that was bricked in during the 7th century by Muslims determined to thwart Jewish prophecy. Many Jews believe their Messiah or Savior will someday enter Old Jerusalem from the east through the Golden Gate. So Muslim occupiers blocked up the gate, and it remains closed to this day. The remaining usable gates are as varied and interesting as the old city itself. They each have close ties to the people, places, and events that for centuries have been shaping the face of world history. To enter or leave Old Jerusalem, you must choose a gate that suits your spirit. The Zion Gate in the southwest, scarred by bullet holes, teaches that in Jerusalem you must often guard your beliefs from those of your enemies. The Jaffa Gate in the west has welcomed the trade and ideas of empires. The New Gate in the northwest, without much history, was cut to allow a direct route into the Christian community. The busy Damascus Gate in the north is the most dramatic and elaborately decorated of the gates. Herod's Gate in the northeast is an entry for the humble. The Lion's Gate in the east leads into the Muslim quarter and out to the revered Mount of Olives. In the south, the Dung Gate takes us back to the days of Kings David and Solomon. In the scriptures, we are told that Abram, who was later called Abraham, left Haran for the land of Canaan, taking his nephew Lot with him. Abraham had already been blessed with material possessions from the Lord. However, Abraham stepped over in faith and compromised his wealth and security in response to God's call. He traveled to a land he knew not. He came to Shechem, which was rebuilt by Hadrian and named Neapolis or Nablus. In the time of Jesus, this was the home of the Samaritans and the place where Jesus talked to the woman at the well. It was here in Shechem that the Lord appeared to Abraham and gave him assurance that this land would be given to him and his descendants. Each day the streets and plazas of Jerusalem's old city fill up with people of faith. Most are religious pilgrims and tourists coming to visit some of the most revered and sacred historical sites on earth. Numerous different beliefs and religions are represented. Since the old city was the site of the ancient temple, it is the focus of the spiritual longing of all Orthodox Jewry. Mohammed is said to have had a heavenly vision on a celestial steed, which made Jerusalem forever sacred in the eyes of Muslims. And since many of the events in the life of Christ occurred in the narrow streets of Old Jerusalem, it is hallowed ground for Christians. Given the large-scale ambitions and wide scope of history encompassed by Jerusalem, the visitor may be surprised to find the actual size of the old city to be very small. Mark Twain, who came through these gates in 1869, claimed, "You could walk entirely around the city walls in an hour if you walked briskly." In fact, a complete circuit of the wall covers only about 2.5 miles. Even today, after years of reconstruction, the old city is crowded and in constant need of repair. But no matter what condition it's in, Jerusalem's old city still bears witness to the grandeur of some of history's most powerful kings and rulers, and some of the most incredible feats of engineering and architecture ever undertaken. These walls that Twain saw as small and unimpressive are actually quite new by the standards of Old Jerusalem. They date back only to the early 1500s, when the Turkish ruler Suleiman I, often referred to as Suleiman the Magnificent, took control of Jerusalem and began a major program of urban renewal. When the Turks took control of Jerusalem, the city was in very poor condition. He directed major reconstruction of the wall, again completely circling and limiting access to the city. He repaired some of Jerusalem's holy places and improved the failing water system. But the work was done quickly and often carelessly. It is still obvious today that many of the large stones displaced when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in the 1st century were haphazardly set in place by Suleiman's workers. Suleiman's wall frequently strays from the path of earlier city walls, and old Roman wall engravings can be found upside down or out of place. With his efforts, Suleiman joined a long line of rulers who felt Jerusalem needed to be protected by a wall. Evidence indicates man first established a true community in the area nearly 3,000 years before Christ. Reasons for selecting this particular Judean hillside are fairly obvious. The area is well elevated, allowing for an easy defense. The water comes from the Gihon Spring, which has for centuries been praised for being surprisingly clear and clean. Nearly 4,500 years ago, a community of Jebusites built what is believed to be the first of the city walls. However, they left the Gihon Spring outside their new wall. To prevent an enemy from cutting off access to the water, they completed a secret tunnel to the spring. But for normal, peaceful times, they also cut what is believed to be one of the first of Jerusalem's gates, an entry placed near the spring, so the water could be easily carried into the city. Since that time, Old Jerusalem's walls and gates have gone through a variety of incarnations. Over the centuries, there have been perhaps as many as 50 different gates. They were gates named for the everyday commerce they allowed, such as the Sheep Gate, Horse Gate, and even the Water Gate. There were gates named for prophets and tribes of Israel, and there were gates named for the places to which they led. Over the centuries, new gates were cut, only to later disappear, covered by the ages. The ruins of new entrances are constantly being located during excavations in the city. For instance, in the early 1980s, work was begun to renovate the plaza inside the Muslim quarter of the old city. During construction, the remains of a magnificent 2nd century Roman gate were exposed. As the workmen dug further, they found Roman rooms and relics from the Crusades. Still further, huge 1,000-year-old paving stones that were part of a magnificent plaza were unearthed. Many times over the centuries, the walls and gates of Old Jerusalem have protected the residents from enemies. They have allowed the people to shut themselves inside their city, locking out physical attackers. In fact, 4 of the gates, Herod's Gate, the Jaffa Gate, the Zion Gate, and the walled-up Golden Gate, have a history closely tied with physical threat from the outside.